We're going to do some live coding today. And I'm super excited that Crystal has agreed to help me out here because
friends don't let friends live code alone.
Exactly.
And I happen to be wearing a code mono today.
So we're going to show you a few of the cool new features that AMP offers, but I also want to show off a few of the oldies but goldies under the AMP components.
Yep, how a little bit of old world AMP meets new world AMP, and how it all exists together in the AMP ecosystem.
So what are we going to build?
So as we've all been noticing, it is a conference today, and I am all about it in a kimono. I am in session, and I would love to live code something that can give us a central hub of the conference.
OK, so how about we build an AMP conference page? So we've prepared something. So this is what we have so far. This is what we're going to start with. So we have a really nice blue header and the agenda.
And it's super boring because this already exists on amp.dev.
And it looks better. So yeah, we want to make this more interactive, more engaging. For example, we want to show live tweets about AMPConf that are happening right now.
Mm-hmm. We want to know what you're saying about all these sessions, but I also want to know what other people are seeing, what's going out in Tokyo and what's happening at AMPConf today. So do you think we can get some photos from the AMP team up here?
We totally should get some photos from the AMP team made up here. So let's get started. Oh, and of course, the agenda needs also a little bit of improvement here.
So we'll see what that's about.
So let's take a look at the code. Oh, before we start, so we kind of have three different, our app has gonna have three different parts. So we have the agenda, tweets, and photos. So in order to be able to navigate between these two, we're going to use like a bottom toolbar. So I think that pattern works really well on mobile, and that's what we're going to focus on in this session. So because it's so easy to reach with your thumb. So
and probably most of us attending are carrying our phones around, but not always our laptops. So we're going to focus on mobile here today.
So a few words about our setup. So we have a Node.js server running in the background, and it's serving this file here. And we also use a template engine to render this page. So we have here at the top the AMP boilerplate code that every one of you should already know. And then we have some basic styling for the header and so on, fonts. And then here we are rendering the agenda. So it looks a bit weird, but these are mustache templates. And the server passes in the agenda object that we render here. And I'm using the square brackets instead of the curly ones in order to not conflict with the normal mustache templates inside of AMP-list. So what we want to do is we want to split this into three sections. And before we start, I'm quickly going to remove the agenda, and so that it's easier to understand what's going on. So we want to have three sections. First one is the agenda, and the second one is going to be tweets, and the third one is going to be photos.
Woo. So
far, so good. And then we want to have three buttons, and each button selects a different tab. So whenever you hear select in AMP, you should think AMP Selector. It's a very useful little component that keeps you the burden of having to maintain the selection state away from you. Very useful. You definitely should check it out. So let's add an AMP Selector component here. And I'm going to add a class because we are going to have to style it later. So in here, I'm going to add three options. So the thing is, everything that's inside an AMP selector and has the option attribute is going to be selectable. And we are going to have three elements. So it's the agenda, tweets, and photos. So here we go. No, that was a little bit too much. And option 2. So, oh, and of course, I forgot one thing. Initially, the gender should be selected. I mean, we can take a quick look on what it looks like. Pretty much like nothing. So first of all, let's style the selector a bit. I'm gonna reuse our navbar class, and I'm gonna put it to the bottom. So that's the first thing. So let's check it out. Looks a little bit better, but still the buttons need a little bit of styling. So, and I have the feeling that the flex layout is going to work just fine here. So I'm going to use display flex. And then we have to, so this means the buttons are all in one column, and then we need to evenly distribute the bottoms, and we can use this using justify content and then space around.
And when I was new to CSS, Flexbox was a real lifesaver for spacing. So if you don't know much about it, check it out.
Here we go. So
it doesn't work because
yes.
the secret to AMP is always remembering to import the script for the component you are using.
So here I'm going to include the AMP select element. And we see now we can actually select elements. You notice as we have the small outline that gets added by default. So let's stylize this. So again, first I'm going to use opacity to style the currently active element. So by default, all children of toolbar have an opacity of 0.5. And the selected one should have an opacity of 1. So the good thing about AMSelector is that you can easily target the selected element using via CSS using the selected attribute. And here we're going to set the opacity to 1. And we're also going to set the outline to none, as we're not going to use it here. So let's take a look.
Ooh.
Yeah.
So the opacity is looking good, but that outline is still there.
Damn it, too bad. So, but the reason is, so the outline is added by default in the AMPSelector. And so we have to override this rule and we have to just make them a little bit more precise by adding the AMPSelector element here in our rule. And so outline is gone, and we can switch between our beautiful buttons.
Can we see what it looks like with the agenda in there?
Yeah, no, first we have to actually implement the tabs. So, and the different ways you can implement tabs in AMP. So the way I'm going to choose is to use AMP bind. And the idea is to use a variable called tabs, which keep tracks of the current selected tab. So the first thing we do is we hide the photos and the tweets tab initially, and then we're going to add a binding to the hidden attribute, which means this attribute will appear or disappear depending on the value. So if tabs is not equal null, then the agenda will be hidden. And we're going to copy this and add it to the others as well. We just change the index of each of the tabs. There's one subtle bug in here. So we see that initially the agenda should be shown. However, AMP_state or AMP_state variables are not initialized on page load, only after after a user interaction. So this means initially tabs is null. So if AMP_state changes anything on the page, even unrelated to the tab value, this basic tabs is going to evaluate to null. And null is not equal to 0, which means the agenda will be hidden. So that's something really to watch out. The correct way to do this is to add an AMP_state statement and then initialize the AMP_state using like a JSON string, or use this really dirty hack, which I'm doing by just simply checking if tabs is larger than 0. And
null is larger than 0.
Okay, so the next thing we have to do is to actually change this the tabs variable, and we're going to do this by listening to the select element event on the AMPSelector class. So on select, we're going to update the AMP state. So now we're going to set the state, and we're going to set the tabs variable to the value that's passed in via the event. Here we go. And this looks pretty good, I would say. Mm-hmm. The only thing we've forgotten is to actually import AMP bind.
So there's a funny little thing about AMP bind. It is the only AMP component that will not throw you a validation error if you don't import the script. I have lost way too much time to debugging that and sent way too many emails to Sebastian
No, but
about it.
that definitely happens to everyone.
Yeah. So don't feel bad if it happens to you, but
always
keep it in
remember,
mind.
import the component before you start working on it. Not like I'm doing. So anyway, our tabs are working. I can successfully switch between the different tabs. Now we have to. Now I'm going to re-add our agenda back in. So let me quickly grab this from here, and yeah, let's see how it looks. So agenda is here.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, and.
So great. Now it looks like we're having something set up. We have some sort of navigation, but all of this is taking up a lot of my screen space, and I'm really here to engage with the content. So I want to see what we can do about freeing up some of the space from the header and the navigation bar. And this is something I'm really excited to show all of you today, because it was implemented from a feature request I made when trying to develop some guidelines around animations in AMP. And something that's really common that a lot of people ask for is these scroll away headers. And it's something that's really, really hard to do in AMP, and it's really, really hard to do even in pages that don't use AMP. But now that it's been implemented through one of my favorite components, which is the AMP FX collection, it is just so easy to do. So now that I've imported it, the AMP FX collection works by adding a cute little attribute to whatever other component you want to have an effect or a transition to. And that is AMP FX. And I'm going to give it a value of float in top. And that's it. Let's see if it does anything. No, but wait. Just like that. And here's what's so cool about it too, is it tracks which direction your users are scrolling in. And often when users are scrolling down, it's because they're engaging with your content. And when they start to scroll back up, it's because often the navigation is up at the top of the bar. And if you have a hamburger menu up there, we know that our users are scrolling up and they're probably looking for that. And it just floats right in. And here's the thing, I also have my nav bar at the bottom. My users don't need to use that while they're engaging with my content. So I'm going to copy this, although it's such a short bit of code, I'm not quite sure why. And I'm just going to copy it on the navigation bar at the bottom. And just going to tweak something really quick, because guess what? It's at the bottom. All right, let's take a quick look, see if it did anything here. And voila, my page is now pure content and now pure navigation. So now that I can see all this lovely content, I think it's time to add a little bit more to it.
Yeah, definitely. So let's do live tweets. So the idea is we want to show all the tweets that are happening at the moment about AMP.conf. And yeah, we want to display them inside the tweets tab, but they should be updated in real time. So when there are new tweets coming up, I want to see a little bit of telling me, hey, they're new tweets. You want to read them? And when you click on them, they should appear. And in AMP, there's this fantastic little component which people should be using more. It's called AMP Live List, which does exactly this. And the cool thing about it, it's super easy to implement, because you don't need to do anything in your backend. You don't have to do WebSockets or whatever. You just serve your page, and AMP runtime takes care of basically checking with your backend whether there are any changes, and if there are, merging them into the current page. So let's take a look how it works. So let's close this one here, and we're gonna now work.
And you guys can help us out by getting some tweets ready, but don't send them out yet. Hang in there with us.
So I'm going to use the AMP Live List. So it requires a little bit of configuration. So the first thing is how many items I want to display per page. So there's built-in pagination support. We don't worry about it too much at the moment. Let's just go with 50. We need an ID, and we need an ID because there's an update button that is required that is going to be displayed if there's new content.
And that ID links the on tap action, which is put through AMP Actions and Event. So was the select one. So we highly recommend reading the guide on AMP Actions and Event. It's what really opens the doors to all that engagement and interaction on your pages.
Cool. And then here comes the important part. There's a div with the items attribute. And every child of this div can be auto-updated. So, and each child needs an ID and a data sort time, which is just which is a timestamp that helps M runtime to correctly sort the items. So now I'm going to use server-side templating. So our backend, before it serves a page, is going to make a request to the Twitter API, gets the latest tweets for Conf, and then going to feed them into this template so we can access the tweets array in here. And the tweets array contains, it's just a pure list of tweets. And each tweet is going to have an ID that we use here. And you see I'm already mixing up the normal mustache templates with my custom ones. The sort time is just a timestamp.
And we should slash that hash under the last tweets.
Oh, yes. Thanks. That would have been annoying
Copy mark slash
later.
that hash. It's mine.
So, and then in here, we're going to print the text of the tweet. OK. I think that's it.
Nope, it's not.
Nope, it's not.
This is why friends don't let friends code alone.
Exactly. So I, of course, need to import the lifeless component. But let's give this a try. So here's our page. We see tweets. They look really ugly. Give me a moment. So what I'm going to do is I'm quickly going to reuse the same cards class we use for the agenda. So now it's still ugly, but at least readable.
Send your tweets now.
Yeah. So send your tweets, and the mLifeless will gonna check every 15 seconds. And the easy way to debug this is in the Chrome Dev Tools. Whoa, there are tweets.
We have new
Excellent.
tweets. You guys, thank you. Great instruction follow.
So let's see. Yeah, something about FX collection. So you see. Live updates inside an AMP page. It was super easy to implement because, you don't need to do anything more or less. Just use the component.
It's already there.
Yeah.
OK, so now we can see what sessions are going on. We know what people are saying about them. And thank you for saying so many kind things, everyone. Let's go ahead and see what people have to say about it. Look at that. Look, so many tweets.
Fantastic.
All right. So let's get some visuals up here. So let me go ahead and close some of these so that we can see what's happening. All right, so in the photo section, I'm going to use a component that is similar in name, but different in use, and that is amp list. And it's going to do this really cool thing where it also uses amp mustache. Amp list and amp mustache are best friends. They love each other. You should always be importing them together. And I'm going to use a fixed height layout. But I'm going to give the height a value of 80 view heights. That way, the height of the list can adjust to all of my users' screen size, but also give me an idea of how large my list is. And my source code is going to be, or my source URL is, all of this is our source code, is going to be /photos. All right. And this is coming together really well. And then because I want my amp list to render a bunch of photos from my JSON backend at /photos, inside of the templating, I need to use an image tag. Now, AMP does require some specific replacements to classic HTML tag. And any AMP developer can tell you AMP image is one of those. So let me go ahead and put it in. And AMP image has a couple extra requirements. It requires a layout, and I'm going to make mine responsive. And then it requires a width. And from my JSON object, I don't have to know exactly what the width and height is. I can just add it in here.
Which conveniently our backend provides.
Yes, thank you. And then responsive needs an S, thank you.
Thanks. That would have taken me ages to see.
Yeah, responsive. Yeah, I like the live coding hands. They're basically jazz hands up here. They're trying to type. All right, and for my source URL, can we guess what's going in there? That's right, URL, and not SRC. All right. So what's so cool about amp list and why we want to use it, especially for photos, is it has this amazing, amazing ability to do infinite scroll because it renders on the client side. And it's so easy to implement. We just add this real quick attribute, which, what does infinite list do? It loads more. And I'm going to set it to auto. And what auto does is it means as my user is scrolling through whatever it is I've put into my amp list JSON, it knows what the next set of objects is coming up and makes a customized request for those objects to come up. It is so easy to do from this side.
From the your backend, of course, needs to support like pagination. So basically, AMP list will tell your backend like, now give me page 1, now give me page 2, now give me page 3, which is pretty straightforward to implement.
And before I forget to do it, I am going to import the scripts for these two things. So import custom element amp list, and then we're going to do import custom template, and it's going to auto do it to amp mustache, since amp mustache is currently the only custom, the only amp templating system we have available. All right, so let's see what lovely photos our amp team has provided us with. And look at that, wonderful photos of Tokyo. Oh, see more?
Yeah,
should we go?
Definitely, totally want to see more.
Oh, this one I think is our favorite one. This is Ben. He's on the same team as Sebastian and I, and he's running the tutorials over there. So please go talk to him. He's as fun as he looks. So these photos look really great. I'm so excited to see that I can scroll forever. But I think we can make them look just a little bit better. And since I've already imported the AMP.fx collection, I should really utilize another option. And since I'm scrolling into the unknown abyss, I think I would like my photos to fade in. And it's just as easy as that float in top and float in bottom. That is AMP.fx. And I'm going to do fade in. And let's see if what a difference that makes. And it does. Oh, here they are fading in. And that just makes it look so much nicer. And the AMP.fx collection has just so many things that are easy to implement. You can have them fade in and out depending on which way your user scrolls. They can fly in from the top, the bottom, the side, the left, the right. Everything on your page can fly in. We don't recommend doing it, but you can. And you can customize at the rate the effects do it. One of the engineers on the core team, Kathy, wrote a really great document on it on our examples guide in amp.dev. Please go check it out. And just one last thing to highlight is your users can scroll forever and ever and ever. And because we've added that float in top and float in bottom, they don't have to scroll all the way back to the top to access your things. All right. So we're looking really good. We have a lot of great things to look at. We have a lot of great things to read. But I think
the agenda definitely needs a little bit more work. So, I mean, it says at the top, AMP.conf live, but, I mean, this agenda is as static as it gets. So instead, what I want to do is basically at least have a little banner at the top that tells me which session is currently going on. And the question is, how do we implement this in AMP? So one approach would be using AMP live list. So it polls periodically for an updated session, but that feels wrong because it means it would waste users' bandwidth. And that's something that you could easily calculate on the client. Unfortunately, AMP bind doesn't really support these kind of date-based calculations yet. However, thankfully, today we learned about AMScript, and you can run your own JavaScript inside of your AMP page. And I think this is a pretty good use case for this. So let's use AMScript. So we're going to go to our agenda. And here I'm going to add the AMScript element. So it supports two layout modes. I'm going to use the fixed height layout. And I think a height of 64 pixels is going to work just fine. And so the advantage of the fixed height layout is because it avoids that the script is going to change its height. So we can mutate the DOM on page load, which is exactly what we want to do. So basically, page loads, we calculate the current sections, and we'll display it here. So, and then, of course, we have to provide a JavaScript file. inside our amp file. It's crazy. So we're going to implement that later. One thing you should add is a placeholder. And I'm going to give it an ID. Let's call it session. And I'm also going to add a little bit of styling. I'm going to use our style card, but I'll make the color pop out a little bit more.
And Sebastian is adding inline style right now, which is not super new in AMP, but it is new to this AMP.conf. This was not available last AMP.conf. So we have a couple of exciting things happening right now. We have inline styling happening inside of AMPScript. It's an exciting moment.
So yeah, and our placeholder is not going to do anything except like display loading. So the next step is to actually implement our JavaScript file. So I'm going to put it into the right folder. I hopefully going to give it the right name.
I know y'all are looking out for us. So,
so and inside here, basically, we can use the normal DOM APIs as you would do as like if you want JavaScript would be run inside the browser. So we can get our label like from the document using getElementById, and I call it session. So and then, for example, we can modify it because, and this is possible because we are in the fixed height mode. So I'm just gonna say, because we have nothing more to say except loading, but we can say this time AMScript loads this. So and this part is called hydration. So there's initially an element rendered server side that's being displayed, and then our JavaScript runs, which then kind of takes swaps this element out by the element that's generated by our AMScript here. So let's not take a look. First, I have to import AMScript. Okay, I feel better. So, and we see, I don't know, it happened quite quickly at the top. So you see first loading and then AMScript. And this means the hydration is finished and AMScript has taken over control of our label. So
we just witnessed JavaScript in an AMP file. So that's an AMP document. That's pretty exciting.
So now let's do the last bit. And real quick, so now we have to get our sessions. So I'm going to implement a little function called update sessions, which is just going to calculate the current section. And the cool thing is you can do fetch requests inside your AMScript. So I'm going to get the response, and it's going to be asynchronous. So I need to use the wait keyword here. And the only downside at the moment of AMScript is that you have to use absolute URLs. Hopefully that's going to change soon. And I can get the sessions from this JSON endpoint. And then I can get the actual sessions array by unpacking the JSON response from our element. And now we can calculate the current session by getting the current time. This is just a new date. And going to get the new time. And a sessions is an array. We can, so now we want to get the current session. We're going to find it inside our array, hopefully. So there we're going to have a session. Here we go. And then the session is the active one if the current time is bigger than the start date of the session, and if the time is smaller than the end date of the session. Okay? So, and once we have this, we can update our label. And we say, okay, the session might be null if mconf is over. So we have to check that first. And if it's not null, we say, okay, it's a title. Otherwise, it says no active session. Sorry. and that's it. And let's take a look. So we load our page.
And it looks like it is time for next generation.
Okay.
Yeah, oh, we went over time.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. Anyway, we hope we could show you a few cool things about what you can do with AMP. And yeah, hope to get you excited about trying more of the new features that we've just released.
Yes, so thank you so much, guys.
Thanks.